This is the 2018 Kawasaki Vulcan Voyager VN1700. I'm going to be showing you how to get the front fairing off today. Taking the fairing off is not a really difficult process, just lots of bolts, and if you don't know where to look for some of the bolts, you can get yourself in a situation where you end up breaking something because you're trying to take something off too soon, wrong order, or you just don't see a bolt that's hidden. There's a couple push tabs on here, so even though it feels like it's still locked in place with a bolt or something, it may just pull out. So I'm going to show you where all the little hidden parts are so you can get them out pretty easy. There are 5 bolts up here in the front that you're going to take out. Those are 4mm Allen heads. There are a couple push tabs, push pins, body pins right here that you've got to get out. There's a push pin up underneath here, which you'll have to get out of there. That's kind of hard to see. I'll make sure I get a good light in there when I take it out. There are 2 10mm bolts up under here. And there are 10mm bolt at the bottom, and there's a couple behind this piece right here. So we're going to take this entire bottom piece off first around the roll bar or the crash bar, whichever you want to call it. You do not need to remove the crash bar. You do not need to pull the speakers out. You do not take the glove boxes out of it. You don't have to take the blights out of it. It should pull off there pretty easily. Once we get everything loose, if you have 2 people, it really helps to have someone hold the front end up when you take the last couple bolts out. That way it doesn't drop on the floor. You don't break or scratch something. I'll actually take the windshield off. When I take the windshield off, I'm going to put this bolt back in after the windshield's off, and that'll keep the weight off of the front end. So once I get all the other parts, it doesn't just fall off the front. Everything comes off in one piece. This light stays in. The headlight stays in. This whole clip will come off. Once we get it loose, you're going to have to reach in and unplug the lights from behind. Again, this is where if you had somebody stand out here to hold it for you, it would be nice if they keep the weight off of it so you can pull the plugs. Once you pull the plugs off, this piece is just going to drop off in your hand, and that will allow you a huge amount of access underneath there. Again, if you're planning on doing LED lights, if you're going to add a 3.5mm jack for your phone or your radio, your iPod, if you're going to add switches for any type of device you want to turn on and off. If you want to add a USB port like I'm going to do so I can charge my phone while I'm riding, this is a great opportunity to do it once you have this fairing off. Alright, let's get some tools and let's get started. This should be the extent of the tools you need. Maybe need a couple miscellaneous tools here and there, but for the most part that's about it. Big one is the 4mm Allen wrench, which you need for a lot of stuff on this bike. You can use a T-handle, socket, extension, whatever is your go-to tool for that. I mix it up a little bit. You'll need a small screwdriver so we can pop the body pins out, 10mm socket, small extension, small socket, and a ratchet. Let's get started. The first thing we want to do is remove these body clips. We're going to remove the lower fairing. We don't need to remove the crash bar. If you've never taken these off before, all you need to do is take something small, micro driver, punch, anything like that, and you push down on the inside of these little clips. They will click. You know you've got them. Once you get them down in there, do not keep pushing because they will push right through the bottom. And then when you're going to take your fingers and you simply lift the entire insert up out of there. So we've got 2 on the top, and we've got 1 up underneath the fairing, which I will show you in just a second. I have to move the camera so we can get a better angle at it. Our last body pin is right here. Press on the body pin, it pops in. I don't try to get this one out because you're probably going to scratch the plastic up if you try to dig it out of there. And this is where I showed you before. Once this comes loose, put pressure up here on this top piece as you're pulling outward. You'll be able to work your fingers around. I pull the bottom tab out first because it's easier to get to for me. Our little pin just dropped out. And then you just got to kind of work it to where you can get a finger in here and pull straight back towards you while you're holding this top piece in. And then that piece is off out of the way. I personally like to use a little tray. Try to keep all my bolts, tabs, pieces in one place. That way they're all there when I go to look for them later. Next thing we want to do is remove this little piece right here. There's only 2 10mm bolts that hold it in place. Top left right here, bottom left right here. Take those off. That little piece is going to come off in our hands. plastic, none of it should be super tight. And when you go to put it back together, same thing, do not over tighten your plastic. You will be breaking it and you'll be trying to find new pieces. If you do break a piece, bikebandit.com is where I buy most of my parts, pieces if I need any. I basically rebuilt an entire Hayabusa off of bikebandit.com with their parts. The guy wanted factory pieces and parts. Bikebandit.com had just about everything I needed. So we're going to take about these 2 bolts here. Once you get this one loose, you'll feel this piece is just going to fall off in your hand. And there we go, part number 2 off. Next step after that is we're going to be removing this entire piece right here. There's only a couple places this is held on. There's one right up here, 10 millimeter. There's one down at the bottom, 10 millimeter. And there's one right here, 10 millimeter. After that, this whole piece is going to fall off, pulls out through the front of the motorcycle. If you prefer to use a wrench here, whatever tool you prefer, whatever your go-to is, that's what you need to grab. It is 10 millimeter. And when you pull this one out, this is going to have a bushing with it. It's going to have a metal grommet that comes out with it. So make sure you keep the grommet and the bolt together. That way you know where they belong when you put them back in. And that basically helps keep you from crushing the body piece when you put it back together. I prefer to pull the bottom ones out first. That way my part doesn't drop onto the floor or fall over sideways. If it's held on by the top, it's a lot easier to control by yourself. Bolt number 2 out. As you can see, it's already getting looser. Bolt number 3 up here. And again, this is, if you have another person with you, that's great. They can hold this in place. Even if they're not wanting to help you, if they can hold it at least, keep you from tearing it up, keep you from scratching it while you're trying to get it out of there. 3rd bolt's out, bushing's out. And again, this piece, I had to kind of finagle it a little bit to get it out of here. But if I turned it a little bit at an angle, that piece is out. Next step while we're under here, up underneath here are 2 10 millimeter bolts. So we've got one under the crash bar and one right behind it a little bit, which of course I didn't get in the camera view. 2 bolts here. Once we pull these 2 bolts out, this left-hand front piece of the fairing will be ready to pull loose. Ratchet, shallow 10 millimeter. Something else I do, just for my own personal safety, I keep my hand between any body part and metal that I can. That way if something does swing around and hit, you're not going to beat the crap out of your tank or scratch anything. Once I get those loose, you should be able to just put a socket on there and undo it, and back to deep well with the extension on it. Use like a little screwdriver handle. Front one, unfortunately, you don't have that luxury, because you can't get anything under there, because you will hit the crash bar. If you hold it a little angle, you may be able to get it. For the most part, you're stuck with the socket, and you may even be ratcheting the rest of the way out. I just got my middle finger under there, holding pressure up on there, and turning it out with my fingers. And that's one of those bolts that seem like it's way too long for what it is. Okay, she's loose. Now as you can see, this side is kind of loose, but it still feels like there's something holding it. Until we pull our windshield bolts out, this won't go anywhere, but once we get the windshield out, you'll be able to push forward on this and the whole thing is going to move forward and come off. All right, with this side off, we can proceed to the next step. The next step is going to be pulling the 5 bolts out of the front where the windshield are. There's one more bolt up underneath where the headlight is. It's not the screw that holds the chrome piece on, but it's actually a 10mm bolt right behind of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the windshield off. Once I get the windshield off, I'm going to put this screw here back in just to hold the weight of the fairing off, so when I take the bottom bolt off, the whole thing doesn't fall off on the ground. Again, I'm doing this by myself. If you have someone with you, helps out a lot, because you can actually take all the bolts out, have them hold the weight off of while you take the last bolt off and remove it. Once this gets loose, I'm going to pull that back off, and I'm going to stick my hand down in the back, and I'm going to unplug the 2 side lights and the headlight. The headlight just pulls out. The 2 marker lights, 2 side lights, have little clips. You're going to press in on the clip, pull down on the wire to get it off there. I'll show you the best I can once I get in there. Take my T-handle, 4mm. Just going to break these loose. They should not be tight. Again, everything we're dealing with here is plastic. Plastic on plastic for the most part, and a lot of times you over tighten them, you just end up breaking stuff. So we're going to get those loose, and I'm going to take these out. If you'd rather use your socket, extension, whatever works for you. If you feel really brave, you can probably put this on an impact or drill and zip them out. I personally don't want to do that, just because if I slip, break something, don't feel like buying spare parts, but realistically, there's nothing to stop you from taking an impact and just zipping these out real quick. I usually pull my middle one out last, just so I've got better control over the windshield, since it'll just flop on the floor on me. The chrome piece will come off at the same time as the windshield. The T-handles are nice because you can use them just like screwdrivers. Another note, the little body pins, I'll try to put a link at the bottom at the end, and if you need the body pins, you can get them on eBay. They're like $5 for 100 pins. So if you're going to do any type of body work on motorcycles, or even take this apart more than once or twice, there's 3 or 4 different types of body pins on this one. Again, bikebandit.com, type in the make, model, it'll pull up an exploded parts view of your motorcycle. You can actually figure out what size you need, and then get on eBay and buy 100 of them for $5. They ship them from China. It takes them a month to get here, but either way, if you've got them on hand when you need them, you got them. Again, back to this last one. Once I start to take this last one out, the windshield's going to start moving around. I'm going to get it to the point where I can just undo it with my fingers, which of course is not there yet. Come out on the wrench, so taking the weight off of it, keeping it from hitting anything, and then straight out. Weighs about 2 pounds, so not super heavy, but be ready for it when it comes off there. It doesn't fall and hit the ground. Set it someplace where you won't drop it over and you won't be buying a windshield. Okay, once I've sat that down, again, I'm going to take this middle bolt and I'm going to put it back in here. I'm not going to tighten it up. Basically, I'm just going to run it in there. That way the weight is off the fairing for me, so I can work on the bottom half without having to worry about something shifting and falling off and dropping on the floor. So it's in there. It's not super tight. It's just keeping the weight off the front, because once I get that bottom bolt out, this is going to want to drop off. Next step is the bolt underneath here. I already broke it loose. I'm going to fold my camera down out of the way. Just going to take my socket here, pull it out of here. Again, if you don't have that top bolt in, as you can see, this whole front end is loose now. Without that top bolt being in, or without somebody holding it, it won't necessarily fall off on you, but it's just liable to slide forward. You might end up tearing a wire, breaking something on the inside. So put that top bolt in, or have somebody hold it for you. So we've still got our bolt in the front here to hold the weight off the fairing. There is one more step. You don't have to take the speakers out, but you do have to pull the grills off. Once we pull the speaker grill off, behind the grill there's another 10mm bolt hidden up in the corner up in here. Just going to grab my 4mm T-handle. And so get those out. The speaker grill will fold out. And right up in this corner, right here is another 10mm socket, a 10mm bolt that you'll need to get out. Inside of the glove box here, there's a tab right here. It's hard to see on the camera, but that tab will keep this also from falling off. Again, once the weight is fully off of it though, that's the last thing that's going to keep you from falling off, except for that bolt in the front there. So we're going to go ahead and pop this out. I'm going to shut that again so it's not in the way. And out. And we'll go repeat the other side. Same thing on this side. If you open the glove box and look in here, you'll see that little plastic tab basically holding the fairing on. Helps line up the pins and stuff in here. There's a couple little clips in here that we're going to have to line up to keep your plastic in place, but for the most part it's just going to fall off after the last couple bolts here. So with that out of the way, we're going to take the last bolt out, which we put back in to hold it in place. Again, second person here comes in handy as can be, so you're not dropping anything on the floor, breaking or pulling any wires apart. Once you get this loose, you can tell the whole fairing will come off. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get in here and you're going to have to unhook the headlight and the two running lights. Okay, sorry about the camera angle. There's not a whole lot I can do here. Basically, I'm going to lift up off this. I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to push in on the tab that's holding the light in place. Once you press in on that, if you pull down and wiggle, the light will come off. The headlight itself, once you get to the back of that, you've got to pull towards the back of the motorcycle. And this does not have a clip. You just kind of wiggle it back and forth gently. Make sure you have a hold of the whole housing and not just to pull on a wire. As you're wiggling and pulling backwards, this will pop off the headlight. Once you get that one off, onto the other side. Pushing in. And pulling down. Once your headlight's loose, work on the last wire. This side, similar to the other side. You have to press in on the tab. Once you press on this tab, you press down and the wire comes off in your hand. There should be nothing left now besides pulling the front off. Lift up gently. Pull your two little rubber tabs out on both sides. And just look down in there as you're lifting up off there. You've got to kind of work it around the turn signals. And your front end is off. Now, if you want, and you haven't pulled these off before, it's your first time, if you do remove the speaker, you can pull this baffle out. Pulling this baffle out will give you an extra little bit of room. Gives you some more left and right play to the fairing. It also gives you more room for error. If something does go wrong, it's more likely to drop off. But it does give you more play for 4 more screws on each side. And 2 speaker wires, these will pop right out of there.